Hi, John Czapko, Thrive Insurance Group. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the evolving cyber threat landscape and what you can do from a small business perspective to protect yourself in the future from future state attacks that are coming down the pike. So I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine who's really deep in the cyber threat landscape environment. And we talked about a lot of different things, but it talked about a few things that were relevant to small businesses and what is coming from a next-gen landscape of a cyber threat perspective. You know, the cyber criminals today, we need to stop cyber criminals, and cyber criminals today need to be right one time. We need to be right all the time. We need to be constantly playing defense, and they need to be right one time. So it's a constant game of whack-a-mole that we're playing where we need to keep them out all the time, and they just need to be right once to penetrate our environment. So we need to be on our toes, and we need to be thinking about the next generation threat landscape. And so we talked about three different areas that I thought were really interesting from a small business perspective. Number one, it's AI technology powered attacks, and AI is really used for a lot of good in the world, and there's some people, bad actors, that are using it for bad, of course. And so what we talked about was scale attacks of DDoS, denial of service attacks, that are coming at scale. So not just one attack, but coming at you massively at scale. So things are coming at you at scale rapidly. So how do we protect against that? Also, we talked about deepfake technology. So what I've heard about in Europe and what we talked about was that they're using not just a phishing email scam, but they're using generative AI, Gen AI, where they're taking my voice, my image, my video, and they're doing a video phishing scam or voice scam, and they're asking people for money, and they're wiring them money, and they're doing all this, and they're not doing it from an email phishing scam. They're doing it with voice and video and that type of stuff. I've heard it happening in Europe. I haven't heard about it happening here in the US, but it's pretty scary stuff. The last piece we talked about was supply chain security. So looking upstream and downstream in our supply chain. And we did this a lot when I was in the security space in large companies, but it's happening now in smaller companies. And I talked to a friend of mine who has a label printing business. They print labels for very specific industrial use things. And we were talking about security, and he said, I'm not a threat. I just print labels. And I said, right, they're not necessarily attacking you. They're attacking you to get to your customers, your upstream customers or your downstream customers. And he kind of stopped and said, he is that potentially weak link in the supply chain. So looking at your supply chain holistically and determining who some of those weaker links may be within your supply chain is kind of that next gen, because they're going to attack those supply chain vendors and try to infiltrate your environment, whether that's upstream or downstream. So three different threat vectors that maybe we're not thinking about from a small business perspective. So how can we thwart those environments? How can we protect ourselves from those things? We can use AI for a good perspective. There's a lot of good tools out there. There are some white labeling tools that are excellent that will thwart those attacks before they get in your environment. I think there's some great tools. Make sure you look at those. Make sure you're working with your IT service providers, your MSSP, to make sure those tools are in place. Number two, the old standby, employee training is key. Make sure your employees are up to date on the latest phishing scams, whether it's Gen AI, whether it's the old-fashioned phishing email scams, whatever they happen to be. Make sure your employees are up to date. And then number three, when you do your annual review of your supply chain, which I hope you're doing as part of your business continuity planning, you want to look at your vendors and your supply chain and make sure that you're looking at them from a security perspective. Don't necessarily do a security audit, but ask the security questions. What are you doing, Mr. and Mrs. vendor, from a security perspective? Tell me about your security posture. Do you have a cybersecurity policy in place? Do you have the proper protocols in place from a security perspective to prevent a security attack, a cyber event from happening within your environment? So these are some tips and tricks. If you have questions, make sure you're working with your IT security provider. Make sure if you have questions from an insurance perspective, you're working with your local insurance broker or agent. If you have any other questions, we'd love to be of service. If we can answer any of those for you, feel free to reach out to us via email, via YouTube, via Facebook. And remember, have a great day. Thrive today, protect tomorrow. Have an awesome day. Take care.